Hey everybody, Josh Schertzen of World Alternative Media here, and we are joined by the one and only Benny Wills of former Joy Camp fame. Also has a new YouTube channel that you can see in the links below. We are also joined by Dan Dix of pressfortruth.ca. You can also find his link below, and obviously, as always, Tim Pachote of the Liberty Advisor. We're going to go into a whole bunch of news stories today that are pertinent to the issue of authoritarianism in the United States and globally right now that many of us have been warning about for many, many years now. And, people call us crazy, whatever it might be. Well, the fact of the matter is today, we are standing not just on looking at the New World Order on our doorstep, but it's in our house at this point. We are dealing with everything we have been warning about for so long, not on our doorstep, but in our house. And we're going to go into many articles and many issues that relate to this issue. Today, I want to start with a few articles, starting off with one out of Fortune magazine, which I brought up in previous streams, that says New York City prepares to use parks as temporary burial sites. So there's a lot of fear mongering regarding the potential use of major parks in New York, even possibly Central Park, but mostly Hart Island, as mass burial sites, which obviously for a multitude of reasons is making people ask the question, is this real, or is this just fear mongering, or are they just trying to pull on the heartstrings of New Yorkers, especially by utilizing parks when you have vast wilderness around New York? And how many bodies are there really? Have you checked the hospitals lately? I don't see a lot of traffic in the hospitals. And also jumping to the next article we have out of CNN Business. I know CNN. It says Google to release your location data to help fight coronavirus pandemic. And of course, they were giving it away, or they were selling it to China previously. Now they are openly just giving away your data. This includes your email. This includes all the things that you talk with people privately on. They're just giving it away. And I wanted to first go to Benny Wills about these latest infringements. We are witnessing something unprecedented today that even a year ago we knew would have eventually happened, but is literally just encapsulating the world right now. What do you think, first of all, about the fear mongering regarding coronavirus and what it might lead to as far as authoritarianism?
Well, I mean, I feel like we're still in the explosion phase of this. So the dust hasn't settled. So we really don't know exactly what this is going to lead to. And I think right now we're still at the moment where it could not get as bad as it seems like it could, which is what I'm trying to hold on to. Yeah, I know it's really bad. I mean, when you can't even go to stores anymore, there's a problem. And regarding the articles you just mentioned, I don't know. The first one sounds like total BS to me. I don't think they're going to be burying anybody in any parks. That sounds like total fear mongering. But fear mongering is the name of the game, and they are running rampant with it. So yeah, I mean, it's obviously a really insane, crazy time, and I think we're all just trying to grasp whatever we can to make sense of all this in the midst of the smoke that's still in the air that has not settled yet.
Right. And obviously, as you mentioned, fear is the game, and they're going to do whatever they can to scare people into submission, even if they don't have an illness that's strong enough to actually start killing a whole bunch of people, as many as they say they are. Then you have to settle with fear, right? Dan, what do you think of these most recent stories regarding coronavirus and the rise of authoritarianism utilizing coronavirus as the tool, as a catalyst?
Well, I think we are now in a post-coronavirus pandemic world where the steps taken by these authoritarian regimes cannot exactly be taken back, I think, at this point. A lot of the things that they're doing now are going to be there for a long, long time. And we've, warned about this, saying that, look, they often say that certain emergency legislations are going to be enacted, but they'll just be temporary in order to keep you safe now, but they'll be lifted later. But history proves they often aren't lifted later. And now we're venturing into some very uncharted territory where things are getting real scary. I mean, a World Health official just last week, I believe it was, just made the announcement that they may now have to come into your home in order to separate you from a sick family member, to essentially isolate a sick family member, take them away from their home, away from their family, isolate them somewhere. And that's where we're moving with this. And how are they going to do that? Well, it's obviously going to be done by force. It's obviously going to be in cahoots with the military that they're now dishing out all over the place. Canada, the U.S. rolling out military troops in order to work in tandem with the police in order to deal with what's coming. So I think we're in some pretty crazy uncharted territories. And like Benny said, though, we're at a bit of a fork in the road. It can go a number of ways right now. And that's why it's important to talk about these things now before they get really, really out of hand. We got to try to stay steps ahead.
See, that's the issue. A lot of people will call fear-mongering and all that kind of stuff. And I understand where they're coming from from that perspective. But my job in the news is to talk about these issues that are realities that we need to know about so that it does not become an issue. I do hold on to faith, like Benny was mentioning before. You know, maybe things won't turn out that way. Maybe things will get better. And I really hope they do. But in the meanwhile, while these things are rolling out, they need to be talked about. They need to be understood, and people need to be aware of the fear mongering, of course, because most people I talk to, there's a reason why I'm here in Mexico right now. I came over to Mexico because I thought, you know, maybe things won't be terrible in the US, maybe things won't be terrible in Canada, but they probably will be for at least a good period of time. Long term, I think freedom, individuals will prevail over all of this. But short term, it does not look good. The economic constraints, the government constraints, all these issues really concern me. And I want to jump into the next article here, which it says a lot. All you really need to know right here out of WKRN.com. It says, Kentucky is putting ankle monitors on coronavirus patients who ignore self-isolation order. And this is going to be eventually carried over to, I think, individuals, generally speaking, not necessarily ankle monitors, but, you know, we're walking into technocracy. We'll go into that a little bit later in the show, but the way they're kind of unrolling a social credit program slowly but surely, I believe, like 9/11, we saw the Patriot Act, which was already written pre 9/11. We're going to see very similar issues come up and arise out of this so-called pandemic that we're seeing worldwide. Like right now, if you look at the next article out of the Washington Times, it says San Diego citizens face $1,000 coronavirus fines, jail time for watching the sunset at beaches. So let me just think about this for a second. I mean, if we're talking about social distancing, you're on a beach by a vast ocean and you're going to get arrested, possibly face prison for sitting outside and watching a beautiful sunset. I mean, when it gets to that point, you have to ask, is this about stopping the coronavirus or is this about controlling you? What do you think, Dan?
Did you see the clip? It reminds me of something I just saw. A lady in the UK sitting on a public bench, just sitting on a bench all by herself, staring at a lake or something like that. And she's approached by police and she films the whole thing. And she explains that she's not violating the social distancing rules. She's not around anybody. She's merely sitting on a bench looking at the water, and she got arrested. They ended up taking her away and arresting her for that. So I don't know if you saw that one, but it's getting every day. It's almost like every day there's something new. Every time I leave the house and I go out to do things that I got to do, I'm just blown away by these new measures that they're taking, you know, whether it be how cashiers deal with cash when they hand it to you now. I don't know if you noticed that. Are you guys getting them giving you money on a plate, and then, you know, so that there's no exchanging of money, and then you got to put the money back on the tray and then they take it, but then they take it off the tray and stick it in the cash register. It makes absolutely no sense at all. But really it's about breaking us down. Enforcing these things on us and forcing us into self-isolation, which does things to people psychologically, spiritually, emotionally, physically. This is not what human beings need. We need connection. We need to be able to fellowship with one another. So what's happening now, I think we're going to see some crazy ramifications that we can't even imagine today.
Yeah, what do you think, Benny?
Yeah, it's gone full retard. Seriously. I mean, like you just said, you can't even be at the beach. I saw something last night that it's going there. This is absolutely preying on our inability to critically think. And I think that's really the crux of the whole problem, is that since that's been absolutely taken out of the education, no one can process information properly. And so we're led wherever they tell us to go. I mean, going to the beach, sunlight is probably the best disinfectant there is. And I saw a thing yesterday that says that they are giving people citations on the beach for just sunbathing. They can be in motion, they can walk their dog, they can go for a jog, they can swim in the water, but they can't be still. So getting the sun's rays, which will probably help your body if you have an infection, is not allowed. I mean, that's fully retarded.
Yeah, and we're seeing literally the opposite reactions take place at the hands of the government. For example, and it's similar all over the world. The governments do stupid things. People react however they might. In the U.S., they're more subservient to the government, and same with Canada, but less so in Mexico, where I am right now. And we're seeing like the government crackdown. They said you cannot serve alcohol in your business unless you serve food with it. Well, wait a second. Small amounts of alcohol can kill germs. Food can spread germs. That seems very arbitrary. Or at first, the World Health Organization, the CDC, said don't wear masks, and then they said okay, wear masks. Later on, but earlier on, they said hug a Chinese person day. And I mean, like, it's so conflicting. It just makes you wonder: does the government know what they're doing? And I think the obvious answer is not. What do you think, Tim?
Was that Hug a Chinese Day? Was that started by Joe Biden? I mean, when he can't, now he has like a proper excuse to go hug people and touch people. But yeah, I mean, John Snyson and I, as soon as this whole thing broke down, we called this immediately an economic 9/11, and not necessarily because of the economic fallout, but because this is going to be used as a skeleton key to jam down every single thing they wanted to do. Everyone probably watching the stream knows that everything was a gigantic bubble. Everyone knows that, eventually this whole thing was going to implode. And so Trump called this a big, fat, ugly bubble in June of 2016, except now it's his big, fat, ugly bubble that he needed to keep it going, keep it going, keep it going. But, he was really in between a rock and a hard place, because if he were to come out day one and admit that the Federal Reserve shouldn't exist and that the whole thing's a scam, it would go down, he'd get the blame. But he did the opposite, and he built up this whole BS system. And now, he even famously said 2 months ago, debt or budget, who cares about the budget? We've got a country now. And so now we don't have a country. We can't even have a First Amendment right to go protest because we have to self-isolate. And so they really have taken even away our ability to even protest this, and I think that's a huge story not a lot of people have been talking about, but this is the skeleton key of, we saw that trial balloon of the digital dollar. And so that was just a trial balloon, because they're going to tie that in to social credit, and then that's going to get tied into vaccine passports. And we're headed towards
absolutely. And Tim, sorry to cut in for a second, but we are getting some comments. You've got your mic turned down on OBS, but turned to the right level for us to hear. So if you could turn the mic up a little bit on OBS, and if you're just joining us today, make sure to hit that like button if you haven't already. I really appreciate the super chats. We're going to get to those soon. One of the things you mentioned it there, Tim, is this issue regarding not being able to protest. If you jump to ahead, actually, to the Business Insider article, and then we'll go back, it talks about how, Maryland, Washington State, Virginia, they all have, threatened 1 year in prison for walking outside without, an excuse to walk outside. And we're talking about $2,500 fines in Maryland, in Virginia, $5,000 fines in Virginia. I don't know the exact ramifications yet in Washington State, but this is what I find crazy, is because at the same time as all of this is going forward, if you could jump to the next article, HR 5717 out of Congress.gov, alongside Virginia, the federal government is actually pushing forward gun legislation to take all the guns. You're literally not able to protest it right now. In Virginia, we saw months ago people protesting the gun grabs. Now they literally cannot go outside. They cannot protest it, or they can go to jail for as much as 1 year. Now think about just what that means, guys. I mean, that means that you literally have no ability to protest. The government right now, HR 5717 proposes I believe a 30% tax on ammunition and a 50% tax on all guns, and you won't be able to touch a gun until you get a license legally. But with that said, you have to touch a gun to get your license, so it's a big loophole issue there. Jumping back to you guys, Benny, what do you think of the impact on individual liberties as far as protesting goes? I mean, you literally cannot protest things right now.
I think there's going to be a huge backlash. I think we're going to see some sort of revolt. I mean, I was just reading last night, I'm pulling the article up right now. Ammon Bundy, you guys hear about this? He organized a meetup in Idaho, in Sandpoint, which is not too far away from where I am here in Washington, and went against it. He's calling it a liberty, what did he call it? Liberty meetup, Liberty Rebellion in Idaho. And people aren't happy about it. But even the sheriff there was on board with it. So like people are, of course, Idaho is sort of a, the exception to the rule in a lot of cases, a lot of times here in America. But that's saying something. People are fed up with this, and as they should be, and they're starting to gather in groups larger than 10. So I think that's we're going to see more of that. There's going to be a huge backlash.
And by the way, Ammon Bundy, if you guys haven't seen our interview with him in the past, he is one of the smartest people I've ever met. And, people look at Ammon Bundy as, a cowboy. Oh, he just knows how to raise cats. No, this guy is incredibly intelligent and self-sustainable at the same time, and a complete anarchist, by the way. Dan,
and being a cowboy is a pretty valuable skill during these days, during a pandemic. No
seriously.
Food. Guilty.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Past civilizations collapse, and what do the most advanced people do? They go and live among the hunter-gatherers. We've seen that in Rome as well. We've seen that in all dependent cultures. It's that saying that Tim always corrects me on. Strong men create good times create weak men create hard times create strong men in a circle, and it's just that perpetual circle that we see all the time. Dan, I got to ask you. You've watched the protest movement grow over the years. You've attended a lot. You've reported on a lot. Into the Fire, your film is a brilliant example of how martial law conflicts with individuals' abilities to protest certain issues. And I have to ask then, you've seen big crackdowns on protests. You've seen the attacks on individuals' ability to gather. This blows that all out of the park right now. You literally cannot protest. What do you think?
Well, I think it's going to get really scary. You look at Hong Kong, for example. They obviously had an incredible momentum and a movement of protesters happening. That's been completely squashed. There's been a great deal of European countries protesting as well, economic turmoil, that's all been squashed. There's been Canadian protests against pipelines and various other issues. This is all being squashed. But I think the real scary thing moving forward is that now they can claim that any one of these protesters is potentially an asymptomatic carrier, as somebody who is not showing any symptoms, but we believe you may actually have it. Therefore, you have to be isolated. And this gives them the ability to essentially shut anyone down and silence any voice that they want. Anyone who now goes against the status quo moving forward, a protester, an anti-government person, anything like that, can effectively be silenced. And now the authorities will have the people championing that this person be silenced for their own safety. So we're heading into some uncharted territory where not only protest is going to be shut down, but free speech in general is under attack today.
Yeah, and I want to kind of get into risk versus reward here a little bit. If we can jump a couple articles back, Tim, to let's see, where is it here? The New York Post article. It says 15 men arrested for alleged quarantine violation at New Jersey funeral. This is from April 2nd, but what isn't mentioned in the title any longer, originally it mentioned it, was a 100-year-old man was arrested. A 100-year-old man who was mourning a loved one who just died got arrested for going outside. Now, if I was 100 years old, first of all, long life, God bless him, and I'm sure he's had an amazing life and all that kind of stuff. If you're 100 years old, I think you at that point are mature enough to decide your own risk factors and benefits, and whether you think it's a good idea to go outside or not in this pandemic. And I'm sure if he was 100 years old, he just barely missed the Spanish flu epidemic. And then jumping to the next article out of WND, 32 police officers break up 1-year-old girl's birthday party. So they need 32 police officers, which is not social distancing, by the way, to go and risk all these children's lives with possible coronavirus to stop them from possibly spreading coronavirus. Now, this just, to me, seems like an example of, look, do we shut down the whole economy? Do we put possibly 1 billion people worldwide out of jobs, and most of those jobs will not come back after the economic constraints of this? Do we do all of that because maybe a 100-year-old man might take the risk upon himself to go outside and risk getting sick? What do you think, Dan?
It doesn't make sense. There's clearly an unproportional overreaction to this, and certain regimes, authoritarian regimes, are taking more advantage of this than others. But I think we do have to look at China as a bit of a blueprint, especially with the controls on technology and the implementation of a big brother that's really starting to be dished out at the same time as this, where they're starting to use drones and robots and your very own cell phone to track you in more invasive ways than we could have ever really envisioned, in ways that just last year, privacy rights advocacy groups would be shouting at the rooftops for the things they're doing today. Well, now they're getting away with unbelievable things. And we got to look at China as the blueprint with their social credit system, their all-seeing eye of Big Brother tracking every single person. That's also something we have to be concerned with coming here, because while everybody's scared and panicking and sitting in their homes being fearful of all this, a surveillance control grid is being set up right now to track, trace, and database every single human being on the planet. And I think we need to start leaving our cell phones at home. If we're gonna be venturing outside, we're getting to the point where we're gonna have to disconnect with certain technologies. Otherwise, it's going to be used to completely control us.
Yeah, what do you think, Benny? I mean, we have these people that are taking risks upon themselves to go and maybe go to a restaurant, maybe mourn a loved one, go to 1-year-old girl's birthday party. What do you think?
Yeah, well, I think people should keep doing it. I think people should still just disobey, because it's ridiculous. But if you go to
what do you think when people say that's irresponsible? How dare you say that? There's a pandemic. What do you say to those people?
I think you really can't speak reason to those people currently, and you just got to keep doing your own thing. But there is, what I like is when I look at Bill Gates's Instagram page, for instance, the majority of the comments are hating on him. I mean, there's still, it's like in 1984, if there's hope, it lies in the polls. This is why there's such a mass pushback against alternative media, is because I shouldn't say most people, a lot of people are hip to this shit now. And they get it. I mean, Bill Gates, if you go to Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation website, their two primary objectives are vaccination and surveillance. You say it right there. So there's a lot of pushback. People are holding him up on a pedestal, but at the same time, a lot of people, in fact, more people, I would say, aren't buying into his bullshit at all, which is promising in spite of the authoritative voices clamping down so hard on everything.
And now we see why the anti-vax movement was such a big problem for them over the last 10 years, and why they've been trying to silence that whole movement, because the vaccines do seem to play a big part of the agenda here moving forward. So that's where I think the alternative media did a really good job over the last decade of bringing that information to the masses, to the point where en masse people are questioning it as they should be. I mean, I think we're still at the stage where we can potentially educate people about this. And as Benny said, it looks like a great deal of people are starting to get it, because they're looking around and they're seeing the authoritarianism and the control and the overreaction, and they realize we've gone far too wrong here.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I want to get to some of the super chats right away, and we'll go into questions. If you haven't sent in your question yet, make sure to send in your question. Super chats help. Hopefully my internet stays stable here, because I'm in Mexico and you get what you get. Anyway, if you haven't already, hit the like button. Join our new newsletter at www.iambanned.com, www.iambanned.com. I really hope to hear from all of you guys. We got a lot of great comments from people coming in. And, a lot of people, one person mentioned, anger plus, critical thinking plus unity equals destroying the New World Order. And I have to agree with that to a great extent, because obviously never more than today have we been in such a huge transformational phase where we need people to come together and work together, not in a collectivist manner, but in the sense that we have a job to do here. And if we sit back apathetic, then it's not going to turn out very well for any of us, because they'll get their way and we'll be sitting there in chains that unfortunately so many people revere. I want to jump to the next article out of Zero Hedge, which says government to decide what items are essential purchases and what things you're not allowed to buy. And essentially they want to tell you you cannot buy seeds in some places, where if you want to grow your own, you cannot buy seeds. They want to tell you that if you want to buy alcohol in some states, you cannot buy alcohol, which, I mean, prohibition always works really well. Isn't that right, Dan?
Yeah. This is crazy. Sorry, what was the gist of that article again? I just had something.
Well, it's just that basically they're saying that they're prohibiting people from buying things that they want because the government is dictating what is essential and what isn't.
Yeah, so basically this is flat out communism. When you're essentially going into a store and they're limiting it down to certain amounts, you're essentially dealing with communism, and that's what I'm starting to see all over the place too. Entire sections of stores are cornered off, saying you can't buy this or can't buy that. And another thing that this is doing is actually triggering the panic buying that they're trying to tell you not to do. So when they cut you off from, they say, we're going to cut off the alcohol sales soon, or we're going to ration this or that, people are going to start to panic, and they're going to start to panic buying. So it almost seems like it's counterintuitive, or it's doing exactly what they want people to do, which is go out there, cause a run and panic.
Yeah. You know? I have to mention a comment here, because Coco Bongo in the chat says McDonald's is essential and put a face. Isn't that funny that, all these small businesses have, it's not funny, but it's just ironic that they've shut down all these small businesses saying they're non-essential, but then McDonald's and Starbucks and Burger King and Subway are all open. I mean, it seems like there's a forced monopolization going on like we've seen before. What do you think, Benny?
Yeah, no, it's really ridiculous. Like I said, full retard. I mean, I was at the grocery outlet market here in town, and last week, and there's a woman who is a plus size woman, and she had her mask on, and she was frantically putting Little Debbie's, Twinkies, Doritos, all this crap into her cart. And I thought, man, like there's your invisible enemy right there. That's what's going to kill you, not this coronavirus. But yeah, no, it really is. And I don't say that, I say it lightly, but also mean it seriously. It is full retarded thinking. It's retarded mindsets. We are because we lack critical thinking, there is retardation at play, and they're using it to their advantage to get us to retardedly buy things that we don't need and be scared of each other. And it is fully retarded because they're wearing masks and they're standing 6 feet apart from each other, but it's in the air. Like, I was at the bank yesterday and I was cashing a check, and I had to stand 6 feet away from the counter while the girl, until she called me over. Then when I got to the counter, she stood 6 feet away from the counter and processed my thing. We went back and forth. It was like a magnet. And I thought, there's no windows in here. Like, you can stand 6 feet away from me, but we're breathing in the same air. If I coughed right now, you'd breathe that in. Like, this is fully 100% retarded. But here we are.
Well, yeah, and I mean, some of the masks certainly do work at spreading things, but largely, with that said and done, I mean, most of them stop, like the surgical masks I see every waiter at the restaurants that are still open wearing here in Mexico, that the government's enforcing that they must do, makes no sense. They're cloth masks. I mean, it saves you from breathing out things that other people might catch a little bit more. It might cut it down like 20 to 30%. But with that said, it's actually making those waiters more likely to catch something because there's cloth, the germs stick to the cloth, and then it's sticking all around your nose and your mouth. It just seems like the most ridiculous thing in the world and doesn't make any sense at all to me. We're going to go to Tim shortly on the economic fallout and everything like that. We're going to skip one of the articles, and I want to go to an article out of the Last American Vagabond.com, which I found really interesting because there's some connections that need to be made that no one's talking about. And obviously there is an end game here. Obviously there's an attempt at controlling the populace utilizing this crisis, and a crisis that they likely created in the first place. I mean, without a doubt they created in the first place. And this article says all roads lead to dark winter. And I'm just reading the first paragraph here. It says the leaders of two controversial pandemic simulations that took place just months before the coronavirus crisis, Event 201 and Crimson Contagion, share a common history: the 2001 biowarfare simulation, Dark Winter. Dark Winter not only predicted the 2001 anthrax attacks, but some of its participants had clear foreknowledge of those attacks. Again, we have an exercise that became a reality, and within 20 years of that happening, we now know through documents that have leaked and documents that have been declassified that these people were actually involved in the actual pandemic and the actual spread of anthrax at the time that everyone called us crazy for. Not me, I was too young, but many of us crazy for talking about at the time. So here again, we have evidence of exercises like we saw with the 7/7 bombings in London, like we saw with a Boston bombing, like we saw with so many other shootings. I can't even bring up some of them anymore because YouTube will literally delete my channel if I mention the name of certain events that have happened over the last 10 years. But with that said, I have to ask, Benny, what do you think of this being kind of like an exercise, a planned out event, something that was created to take control over the populace?
Well, watch the movie Contagion. I mean, we're literally living the plot of Contagion in real time. And that event 201 was 1 month before this big outbreak. And it was a coronavirus outbreak. I mean, it's so obvious, the connection. I mean, yeah, I think it's actually brilliantly diabolical by making it a coronavirus, because the coronavirus is under the umbrella of common cold is under the umbrella of coronavirus. So we probably all have some form of coronavirus. So this push for testing, if you get tested, chances are you're going to come up positive for coronavirus because we harbor this stuff in our bodies. And it's just when it comes out of balance, we get symptoms. I mean, someone commented on a video of mine the other day that a virus is a symptom. When your body is in dis-ease, when it's out of balance, it will show symptoms. And that's what this is. So it manifests in these different ways. And so by calling for mandatory testing, daily testing, weekly testing, whatever they want, they're going to perpetuate this problem because coronavirus is everywhere. It's rampant. It's a part of the human experience.
Right, absolutely. And I mean, the planned out events that we've witnessed over the last 20 years are substantial. I mean, I think we could probably note over 100 if we actually put in the research and the time over the last 15 years, we could easily note maybe 100 exercises that became suddenly reality. And we're all supposed to think that that's a coincidence. One thing, there's a movie by Alex Jones from 2006 or 2007, I believe, called Terror Storm, which honestly, I think it was actually 2008 now that I think of it. But Terror Storm brilliantly did the mathematical equation for the 7/7 and the. Everyone can hear me, right? Okay, cool. I think it cut out for you, Tim, for a moment there. But anyway, I can't help but think of the 7/7 bombing, the coincidence and the calculations that were made. It was like 1 in 100 trillion chance that it could be a coincidence. Dan,
so
you've been studying this stuff for a long time. He's saying there's a chance. And we do have super chats that we'll get into right away. I really appreciate I like the little pop-ups that are coming up on the screen there. Dan, what do you think of the exercises being planned out, and then we see these same things happen right after or during these exercises?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we see it all the time. And I just came across a new one. I was just trying to find it right now to get the name of it, but I can't find it right now. But it's a document that was put out by the Rockefeller Foundation in May of 2010. So we're talking 10 years ago. And they ran out scenarios of a futuristic pandemic world. And one of the scenarios, I think it was called Lockstep. And there was four scenarios altogether. And I read a bit of this Lockstep scenario that they projected back in 2010, the Rockefeller Foundation, and it's to a T everything we're seeing right now. And I was planning on doing a video on it. I probably still will. But guys, check that out. Rockefeller Foundation document. The title of it slips my mind, but it's came out in May of 2010, and it outlined everything we're seeing today, just like Event 201 did as well.
Absolutely. And before we get into more, I want to quickly give shout outs to the super chats. Rainy Steps and Canadian $2.79 in the super chat says, hello guys. Well, hello to you, Rainy. Thank you for joining us as always. Those super chats go a long way, so I appreciate that. Con sent Australian $5.99 says, cheers boys. Well, cheers to you as well. And L Welsh sent Canadian $10 in the super chat. Thank you so much for those. Again, while we're still able to somewhat monetize, and by that I mean super chats, we cannot thank you enough for the help that keeps independent media alive and allows us to counteract the mainstream media narratives. Rainy Step sent another Canadian $2.79 and says, I can't believe how brainwashed average people are. And yeah, there is an average that we've seen that has come out of what public school system indoctrination, media indoctrination, which is just the step up of, public school after you leave school. And, the constant Simon Says kind of mentality of you see this, people react to it, and then they repeat it, but they don't have opinions. They have an identity. And identity politics has become a big issue over the last several years, and a lot of people have been talking about that for sure. I do want to jump into just showing people the website up on the screen, Tim, from the Center for Health Security.org. It's the official Event 201 website. And now Event 201, again, as you can see below, the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security in partnership with the World Economic Forum and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation hosted Event 201, a high-level pandemic exercise on October 2019 in New York. And it almost perfectly followed along with what we're seeing today. And jumping to the next article, this I find very interesting, and I believe this might lead to riots and people being very, very disrupted by the facts later on. I mean, Bill Gates has been saying that he thinks that it might not kill that many people. Coronavirus, after all, might not actually end up taking that many lives.
Like, damn it,
in this Zero Hedge. No, yeah, I know. But in this Zero Hedge article, he literally goes into it a bit further down in the page. He says, but in fact, most people, even who get COVID disease, are able to survive. So in that case, it's quite infectious, way more infectious than MERS or SARS were. But it's not as fatal as they were. And yet the disruptions we're seeing in order to knock it down is really completely unprecedented. And then he goes down to a bit further down the page. He says, millions could potentially die from suicide, drug abuse, lack of medical coverage or treatment, poverty, and lack of food access on top of their predictable social, medical, and public health problems stemming from the response to COVID-19. So we have Bill Gates himself, who's promoting this shutdown, saying himself that this the reaction, the shutdowns could actually lead to far more deaths and destruction than the virus itself. Yet he still says, well, we need the shutdowns. We need this reaction. What does that tell you about people like Bill Gates and his intentions as we're walking into one of the greatest economic global depressions we've ever seen in history by far? Starting off with Benny, what do you think?
I didn't know that he said that. That's interesting. It sounds like he might just be playing both sides. He's just saving face. I mean, because the numbers really aren't reflecting the fear that they're promoting. I mean, Gavin Newsom said 25 million people in California were going to get coronavirus, and so far it's like 13,000. So maybe he's just playing both sides, but he's still holding to that idea that we're going to need certificates to travel, and once we have the vaccine is what's going to be what saves us. So it sounds like he's just doing PR.
Yeah, it's kind of like that situation where 10 years from now, we look back and he can say, well, I said this. See, I said that. I wasn't one of the bad guys. Well, also, if it's the other way around, he could say, well, I said this. We see economists do that all the time. Dan, I mean, Bill Gates, what do you think of that man?
Well, it begs the question, why the heck are we listening to this guy anyways? He's a computer nerd, software guy. That's his sector, not the medical field, not health and wellness.
Who's been giving us computer viruses since 95. So take care of your own virus first.
Yeah, exactly. So why are we even doing this? Well, I mean, on top of the fact that he's just a software computer nerd who happens to be a billionaire, he's also a eugenicist. I just found out the other day that his father is still alive, Bill Gates Sr. He's in his late 90s, and he was on the board of directors of Planned Parenthood. And Bill Gates Sr. is the son of another Bill Gates. The current famous one today is Bill Gates III. So this is a family, a group of eugenicists who have been eugenicists for at least 3 generations. And this is the guy everybody's listening to when it comes to our health and wellness. It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, what does it benefit him, though? That's one thing I've always wondered, because he has played both sides on that as well. He went on, I believe, Stephen Colbert a few years ago and says depopulation isn't the answer. But meanwhile, everywhere else he says depopulation is the answer. Again, playing both sides. But I mean, what does it benefit him to be a eugenicist? I mean, what does he get? He has billions, $100 billion. Is it power? Is it a religious thing? What is it?
Well, it's a false belief that he's actually making the world a better place. I mean, look, like Hitler thought he was doing a good thing by eradicating all of the Jews. In his mind, he thought it was for the betterment of society moving forward. And I think that's what we're dealing with here. Some of these guys think they're potentially doing the right thing.
What do you think is the psychology of this evil, Benny, that we're witnessing?
Well, I'll take it one step further and say that this is it's a spiritual battle. And I think that you said the word religious, and I think that this is a religious battle. I think this is the new religion. I think scientism is the new religion, and it's all faith-based, if you think about it, which is ironic because they're trying to remove religious exemption from vaccination laws. But a vaccine is a faith-based idea. You have faith that the person who is administering it to you or who promotes it is that it's good. It's a faith-based idea, even though there's numerous studies that show that they're dangerous, and there's thousands of accounts of people being damaged by vaccines. You're taking a leap of faith by trusting the powers that be. I mean, so they're pushing something, and they're trying to be gods of the earth. These eugenicists are trying to be gods. That's why Bill Gates' dad is in his upper 90s, because they're doing everything they can to survive as long as they can in this realm, because this is where they are God. So I think it is a spiritual battle. These are the new wizards in white lab coats. They
need a lot of adrenochrome to avoid gnashing their teeth for eternity. I think a lot of them are in fear of death.
And on top of that, the church is effectively canceled. I mean,
exactly.
You can no longer have fellowship. You can no longer pray with one another. You can't go get baptized right now. You're not allowed to lay hands on people, right? I mean, the what's going on here is spiritual warfare, absolutely. When people pray together, when three or more people congregate together and they pray with one another, that creates a certain energy. The Holy Spirit is present when people are praying together, and they are trying to squash that. And they are essentially trying to eliminate that. So I would agree with Benny here. This is absolutely spiritual warfare. And I made a video about that just yesterday. I think I called canceling churches a spiritual warfare that may lead to be disastrous for many, or something to that regard. And I'd strongly encourage people to check that video out because that's the bigger picture here of what we're dealing with. Look, these guys have all the power. They have all the money. They print the money. It goes beyond that. It's literally coming down for a battle for people's souls.
Somebody say money printing? So I got my
Oh, God.
my Trump money done. But I mean,
and that's the thing. We have like one person writes in the chat. Les Johnston says Satan has deceived the whole world, and we are dealing with massive deception. I do believe this is a battle of good versus evil. It always has been, and it always has come down to a simple issue. It's not simple, but it's simple in the terms of there's one thing that all roads tend to lead to, one way or the other. It's good versus evil, and it's interesting because we are seeing a great amount of power shift over to certain regions in the world that I want to get into later. But also, it seems interesting that, people could have $100 billion or $500 billion and still want more and more and more. Maybe it's not money they want. They want some kind of power. They want some kind of ability to stand over top of others and control other people in one way or another. It's a psychological thing. It's the same reason I believe that we see a lot of people go and meet with Jeffrey Epstein. Same reason I see people like Bill Clinton. He has all this money. He doesn't care about the money anymore. He becomes president. He doesn't care about being president anymore. He needs more and more and more. It's an addiction. And then he starts going after young women and doing horrible things to people. And it's just, I think it's a power complex that might go back very far. It might be evil, and it might also go psychologically back to childhood. Something traumatic happened, and they are intent on having power over other individuals. I want to jump to this article out of MSN News, which is, again, dignifying anyway, and vindicating a lot of the conspiracy theories, quote unquote, that many of us have been talking about, which says, did coronavirus leak from a research lab in Wuhan? Startling new theory is no longer being discounted amid claims staff got infected after being sprayed with blood. And there's been countless whistleblowers and doctors out of China that have talked about this. I mean, if it got spread via a bat, then I guess that bat went into a research center, a very secure one, ate one of the only samples of novel coronavirus that was created by man, flew out of the lab, and then someone ate the bat. Because otherwise, I don't think it was created by a bat. And the scientific community is starting to actually agree with me and say, yeah, this probably didn't come from bats. And jumping to the next article, this is interesting because we have from a few days ago, Fauci says lockdown will continue until there are no new cases of COVID-19. No new cases. So 4 months goes by, one person has it, and you're still locked in your home. You can't walk outside. You can't go to church. You can't go to the mall. You can't do anything. Can't go to the beach or in a vast ocean. I mean, like we saw that guy recently get arrested for, I think, paddle boarding in an ocean. It's like, can you get more into social distancing than that? I mean, it's ridiculous. And then jumping to the next article out of The Independent, it says coronavirus social distancing may need to go on for almost 12 months, UK's scientific advice says. And they're also telling people 70 and older, possibly that they might have to stay inside for 2 years, guys. 2 years that you cannot go outside, or possibly face 1 year in prison, or in some places face manslaughter charges. The President Duterte in the Philippines said kill people who go outside. Then they ended up, a bunch of people have already been shot dead in the streets. We've seen that in North Korea. We're seeing people get whipped in India. I mean, it's absolute global totalitarianism. And that brings to mind this next piece out of the Commentator that says, prepare for the mother of all you-know-what storms if Sweden pulls this off. And it says, if Sweden has not locked down its economy and society emerges with a death toll from COVID-19 that is somewhere in the middle of the pack of European countries, there's going to be a lot of recrimination, particularly against those who have tried to silence any discussion about the true extent of the threat that COVID-19 actually poses. So here we have a country like Sweden that talks about possibly just not shutting down anything, much like Belarus, much like a lot of Mexico actually right now. And if we see not as many people die as in Italy, where countless people have allegedly died of this thing that I believe exists but was bioengineered and hasn't spread to the extent that they wanted it to. But with that said, we see all these lockdowns in Italy. The death toll was enormous, but everyone was in their home. What happened? I mean, what do you think of how people are going to react to this after all is said and done, and people, it wasn't as big as they said? I'll start with Benny. What do you think?
Well, I hope that there's more liberty rebellions like we just had in Sandpoint, Idaho. I think that the people will push back. They will. Now, what kind of makes me nervous about that in a way is something you mentioned earlier. You said that they're limiting alcohol sales. That to me is a red flag. If they're going to cut off people's alcohol sales, people are going to get. That just seems like they're trying to incite a response, which is also kind of scary. So the hope to me is that there's a backlash and people just say, screw this, and they go outside and they start going about their business, or they really stand up against the authority. But I also fear that might lead to even more chaos. So I don't know. It's twofold. I'm still in that explosion stage trying to make sense of it all. And I think this is going to be the month. I think April is going to be the determiner, because again, on a spiritual level and on a sort of dare I say conspiratorial level, April seems to be a very popular month when things happen for whatever reason, whether it's some sort of ancient Babylonian ritual or whatever. But April always seems to be like a hotbed.
Hitler's birthday.
Exactly. Boston bombing. I mean, it seems to be a hotbed for activity. So this is the month that everything's on lockdown. I think by the end of the month, we'll have a more clear picture of what we're going to deal with, at least for the next few months, if not the next year. But people need to disobey. That's what it's going to come down. People got to just say enough and go outside and hug each other and open up their business. Go, do whatever. Like, there's got to be pushback, which it's already starting to happen, and hopefully it just is a groundswell. Hopefully it doesn't get too violent.
I got my hair cut today. If you guys can't tell, free market, tax free, and all underground, black market. Very scary stuff. A nice man cut my hair, and he did a good job. Thank you to him, who will remain unnamed.
$20? No.
Actually, no, it's $10. Okay. It's Mexico, man. But Dan, I mean, and we're going to get to Tim right away, because we're going to talk about the economic impact, which I think is, outside of the government control, is by far the most detrimental issue that we're dealing with right now. But Dan, I mean, when push comes to shove, when people recognize that this wasn't as big as they said it was, and they shut everything down. They forced people out of their jobs. They destroyed businesses. They forced people into starvation in the streets, begging for food. There's kids that are becoming prostitutes. I mean, it's absolutely horrible. I'm witnessing, even here, where they've tried to shut down businesses and many businesses have disobeyed. I'm seeing girls that are 11 or 12 trying to sell their bodies because their family can't eat. I mean, it's insane. What happens when people realize that this was all a bunch of BS?
Well, when people lose everything, they lose it, you know? And I think what we're dealing with now is trauma-based mind control. When you isolate people, this is what abusers do to their victims, to cut them off from society and then make them go insane. I think that's essentially what we're dealing with here. So I would have to agree with Benny that right now is the time to disobey unlawful orders and to get out there and do the things that you need to do, you know, and continue to carry on. I actually provided a practical way that people could do this the other day in a video, actually using the technology that they use against us. It's actually possible to create a diversion for the authorities to send them to a perceived hotspot of cell phone activity where you're actually meeting at a rendezvous location. So I'm already proactively thinking of creative ways to stay ahead of the authorities in order to continue to congregate and meet, because we already know this is ridiculous. We're not going to wait and be those people who say, wait a minute, they overreacted. We know they're overreacting now. So we need more people like us to stand up against authoritarian regimes and unlawful orders. And we have to do it now. Otherwise, our rights are going to continually be incrementally stripped from us.
Right. And I remember back in December when I first reported on coronavirus, you know, talking about that same issue, possibly that could happen. But I wasn't sure it would turn its snowball into this. I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, every day I wake up, I'm like, was the whole thing a dream? Was the whole thing a dream? Because it's everything I worried about was so Orwellian. It's so crazy.
Or I mean, nightmare.
Like it's seriously a nightmare. Yeah, it is. I mean, it's horrifying to me. And I as a trigger reaction, I find myself giggling a lot. I look at my phone, I'm like, seriously, that's happening and this is happening. And I mean, it's not that I find it funny. I'm just like emotionally shocked that this is happening right now. It's hard not to be, because I mean, millions of lives are being destroyed right before us, and everyone says, well, it's for the greater good of the greater number. And it's really, really frustrating to witness. I mean, it's so sad for people to willingly, it's like that old Star Wars quote, I mean, and this is how freedom dies, with thunderous applause. And we have so many people thunderously applauding this insanity right now.
With $1,200, that's how it dies. But I mean, ultimately, the amount of tyranny that you get is the amount of tyranny you're willing to put up with. And I think this whole thing is just a beta test to see, okay, well, we got them a little bit scared for coronavirus. So next time when we release something, or if it's an accident or whatever, that then we're going to see the full tyranny roll out, because then nobody will question it, because last time we didn't act fast enough. And then they're going to roll out with the digital dollar, roll out with all the other crap they're doing. But, you know, one thing that gets me is you get all the liberals or fake liberals want to talk about, you know, my body, my choice. I think where they're going with this is going to be, you know, forced vaccinations of, you've got to do this or else you can't be on the road, or you can't get insurance, or you can't get the $1,200 of digital dollars. And then people will get the shot because they want their $1,200 of crack. And then even that $1,200, you know, every family of 4 is getting $3,000, but yet we have to get saddled with $60,000 worth of debt for every family of 4. So terrible deal. And, you know, I know we're getting a little bit off topic. We kind of get into some financial stuff, but you had mentioned the snowballing out of control. Ben Bernanke said this whole thing is like a snowstorm and it's just going to pass in a week or two. I mean, you know, half of you are from Canada. I'm from the snowiest city in America. You know, Benny's up in Washington. We all know about snow, and this is not a snowstorm. I mean, am I wrong in that? So.
No, this is I don't know how to measure it, honestly, because we have nothing in history that we can measure this to, nothing. And I believe that they're creating a technocratic society based on China's model. I believe that was the plan all along. I reported years ago when the IMF said they wanted to base their headquarters in Beijing, going back to Henry Kissinger meeting with Mao Zedong and the alliance and forced, monopolization of the Chinese markets that we saw back then, leading to Zbigniew Brzezinski's Trilateral Commission and his talk about creating a technocratic superstate. And then we see social credit. Then we see facial recognition, all that kind of stuff. And now they're saying, now China is being propped up while the US is falling. I believe that there's a massive power shift happening, and I've done videos recently on that. But before we go further into, the economic constraints, because I do believe this is the most important part right now, other than just a free will and the battle of good versus evil, I want everyone to hit that like button if you haven't already. Check those links below. I really appreciate the super chats and the questions. We're going to get into some questions shortly. I do want to mention that, we're witnessing possibly the greatest global depression anyone could have ever imagined in all of history. I'm not trying to overblow anything here, but this is a fact. We're looking at possibly 1 billion jobs worldwide wiped out. And how do people come back from that? Tim, I want to hear your thoughts on the insanity of, not just the technocratic society, but the cashless society, all that kind of stuff. But how are people possibly going to recover from this? I mean, this could take 10 years to possibly even come back from if this continues on any longer.
Yeah, I mean, my heart goes out to everyone that lost their job. I mean, especially since it's basically due to the government, not basically 100% due to the government, why they're in that position. And it's something I emphasize with, because when I spoke at Anarchapulco, I guess it'd be 3 Anarchapulcos ago, I had to forego the current very good job I was in, and the government, I was waiting to get a stupid fingerprint card, and they ended up waiting almost the entire year and effectively put me out of business. And then, but now, but to recover from that is very, very difficult, very, very difficult. And so I think there's gonna be more lives, and this is not a stretch by any imagination. Way more people are gonna die because of the economic fallout of this than are gonna die from the coronavirus. And this is all pandemic to see what people will put up with, in my opinion. But then look at what was going on with the financial system. It was all built on this whole Ponzi scheme, house of cards. It was gonna come down. But Donald Trump had, 2 very tough decisions. He decided to go with the easy way. And, I knew that there's no way. He's the perfect fall guy for the Federal Reserve. And so you can just, pin everything on him. To some extent, he actually got sort of lucky, because now he can be like, oh, well, everything was going great. And if it wasn't for this stupid, pandemic, that, this economy is just going to, once the snowstorm passes, we're just going to turn the key back on, and we're going to get this, engine right back on and all aboard the Trump train again. And so I don't think that's going to be the case. Now, it might be business as usual for, let's see, the banks, of all the big major financial institutions, because they get trillions of our dollars to then buy up everything when it's all low, and then they get to consolidate their power, get even bigger. So then that way, the next time this happens again, which is, might just be one ongoing, collapse after collapse after collapse after collapse. Now they'll have us even more by the you-know-what. I mean, all the big banks right now are even bigger than they were in 2008. They even have more leverage, more debt. They're more out of control, more consolidation of power. Everything the opposite of what should have happened. Most of these banks shouldn't even exist. The 2008 bailout of AIG was so that way, a lot of people realize this, that AIG had issued these credit default swaps, and then Goldman Sachs sold them those and then bet against them. And then in order for Goldman Sachs to get paid, their man in Treasury, Hank Paulson, then had to bail out AIG. So then AIG can then pay Goldman Sachs. And so these guys, the airline industry spent 96% of all their free cash flow buying back their own stock. They spent $46 billion buying back their own stock, and now get a $50 billion bailout. So all the big hedge funds, all the big venture capitalists, all the big, different investors, the CEOs, everybody got paid tons of money. And so what should happen is, okay, you guys made terrible decisions. You bought back your own stock at all-time highs. Now you should be forced to sell that stock, let the stock price come down, because those are all ill-gotten gains that shouldn't have been there in the first place, and then let the free market deal with it. The planes are still going to fly. Someone will go in there and buy it, but this is not capitalism. Dan talked about how this is communism at almost like the retail store level, but then it's more fascism at the Federal Reserve type level. But whether it's fascism or communism or socialism, speaking of socialism, Bernie Sanders dropped out because, what does he have to run for now? Because we're already basically a socialist, fascist.
And then we're looking at possibly elections being canceled anyway this year. Not that it even mattered in the first place, but yeah, we're looking at it being canceled this year. I do want to give a quick shout out to Tommy Tell the Truth, who sent $2 in the super chat. Says, repent, prepare, watch, and share the truth. I really appreciate Tommy. Good to see you as always. And look, we are going to go into a lot of questions right away, a bunch of questions. I want everyone to go into the description and subscribe to Benny Wills on YouTube, as well as Press for Truth if you haven't yet already. It's all down there below the video. So make sure to do that if you haven't already. Honestly, I'm looking at, the people that are out here even that are doing better than most places in the world right now, because the government isn't cracking down as hard. they're like, what do I do? How do I recover from this? Where do I go next? How is my job going to be there when I come back from all this insanity? And the answer is probably not. I mean, most of these businesses are going to be completely wiped out after all is said and done. Benny, what have you seen in your area as far as job losses go? I mean, a lot of people almost everyone I know that works in like a business of some kind, at a store or a restaurant, is out of work right now.
Yeah, well, that's what I've been seeing. People who, especially people who work in like restaurants and food related places, are all unemployed right now. I hung out with a guy the other night who just bought a house a year ago in Idaho, and it's like his dream house with his wife and 2 kids. And he runs a dance studio in the western part of Washington and one in Idaho. And he has 2 leases and a mortgage that he can't pay now because he can't run his business. Because I guess having a dance class, which is cardio, which is exercise, is not essential. But like you said earlier, still go to McDonald's, but you can't go get a nice workout and be around people. So yeah, I've seen it affecting people. And now he's donating blood for money. Like he's trying to do anything he can so he can keep, roof over his kids' heads for the next while. It's just insane. So yeah, I'm seeing it affect everybody. My sister lost her job. I mean, yeah, it's definitely having a humongous ripple effect.
And I see Luke himself right in the comments of this video. He says that he just cashed out the rest of his savings to pay the rent, and that's it. He's out of money. And that's something I'm seeing from a lot of people. The Airbnb bubble is another one, because people that Superhost had bought 20 to 60 properties even, and have mortgages like crazy and have no one staying at their properties. Once they run out of cash, then Airbnb is going to pop the housing bubble too. I mean, it's just insane. Dan, what are you seeing in your area as far as, reaction to this job losses, how people are reacting to it?
I think the same thing that everyone's seeing all over the world. A lot of people are just kind of bending over and taking it right now. They're sitting in their homes and they're staying away from their work, and they're doing as they're told, and they're going to really start to feel the ramifications of that over the next couple of weeks and certainly a couple of months. But this is precisely why we've been saying for so long that people need to be prepared. I mean, you remember when we used to make preparedness videos a few years ago and people would call us crazy? Well, now it's like, who's laughing now? And I don't want to, nobody's laughing really. It's not maybe right time to use that term, but look, the time is beyond now. It was a while ago to start preparing. And I think that's some of the things that people in these communities need to start thinking about is it isn't too late. You can start to learn how to grow your own food. I would suggest starting there, turn your backyard, get a couple of garden beds and start to learn how to grow your own produce. Best case scenario, you have your own food and you don't have to worry about any kind of run on the grocery store or breakdown in the supply chain. Best case scenario, everything fades away and this thing disappears, and now you know how to garden and grow your own food. So solution-wise, I think that's going to be very important moving forward, Josh, is people learning to grow their own food before the supply chain is interrupted or there's any kind of a run on the grocery store.
Yeah, you see a lot of people...
Now. Yep.
Well, sorry, go ahead, Tim.
Oh no, I got my aeroponic garden out of it's been basically in my storage for the last 5 years, because my kids, when they were born, they started ripping everything out of the bottom. But now I'm like, you know what? I have this. I learned how to grow food, so I might as well do it now. But I'm going to be in Arizona and going to have a very tiny spot to be able to do it. But you don't need a lot. If you are resourceful, know what you're doing, you can actually do a lot with a very little amount of space.
Right. And I'm going to ask everyone, what their most positive outlook for all of this is right away. I do want to mention first that, people thought I was crazy for going to Mexico a couple weeks ago, about a month ago now. And I don't feel very crazy. People said, you're an idiot. How dare you, not be patriotic or whatever. Why didn't you pledge allegiance to some governing body and stay in the United States? I'm like, I'm not even American, I'm Canadian. But, I think it's a good idea what I did, and other people don't. Whatever. We'll see what happens at the end of the day. But I think today, now more than ever, is our time to test our ideas. and make use of our ideas and stand by our ideas, and also just live by example, as I've always tried to tell people to do. Live by example. That I think is most important here. And I'm going to go into the super chats right away, but I want to ask first, Dan, what is a positive outlook that you can bring out of this whole situation? Something that you could say that is a good thing as all this craziness happens.
Well, certainly for people forced into lockdown right now or strict quarantine rules, there is an opportunity here. There is a quietness and a calmness going on in the home in a sense where I think there's an opportunity for people to reconnect with their creator, to begin to engage in this spiritual warfare in the sense that, maybe now is the time when I should pick up that dusty Bible and blow that off and read the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and start to basically reconnect with your creator, because as we said earlier, the bigger picture here is spiritual warfare. And if there is ever an opportunity for people to really delve deep into their Bibles and have some one-on-one prayer time, some fellowship with your creator, after all, that's what it is, a relationship, now is the time to do that, folks. So if I could say that anything positive out of this, you have an opportunity now to one-on-one reconnect with your creator. And I really advise people do that in these very trying times.
What do you think, Benny? Something positive.
Well, I agree with Dan. I mean, that's actually what I'm doing right now. I'm currently right in the middle of reading Luke. But also, this is a time to be with your family and friends, or family in particular. But, make the most of that time because, this is, like he said, a quiet moment. So enjoy that. Maybe do something that you've been putting off for a while, some sort of a hobby or something. But outside of that, I think the best case scenario is that people do see through this. They've overplayed their hand. And I think that's what I'm really, that's what I'm not necessarily holding my breath for, but I do think that they've overplayed their hand so much and making some of their tactics so obvious that people who wouldn't normally see things are seeing them. And I think that if they keep pushing this hard, there will be a pushback, and that we might see some dominoes fall in our direction as a result of this. Even if they are pushing all this technocratic nonsense on us, I think we could see a real uprising and a real overthrowing of evil. Of course, that's been my hope for the last 20 years. Maybe this is the thing. Maybe this is the catalyst. Maybe this is finally the catalyst that pushes people over the edge and forces them out of their slavery and into their freedom. So, that's what I'm really holding on to.
They can only push people so far, right? They can only truly push people to a certain brink before people bite back. The backlash, I think, could be very large just based on, they're promoting Bill Gates so much in the media, pushing his face to the forefront. What happened when they did that with Hillary Clinton? Nobody likes Hillary Clinton anymore. Remember when everyone loved her? Nobody likes her anymore because, almost no one that I've talked to, maybe a few people here and there, but even people on the left, people that are Democrats don't like Hillary Clinton anymore because they got a front page or front seat look at how incredibly evil she is, and the terrible things she's done in Haiti, how she's covered up for molestation and rape and the attack of women and that kind of stuff. We had Juanita Broderick on our show several times as well, a victim of Bill Clinton's, and she was threatened and attacked by Hillary Clinton. Monica Lewinsky was almost put into a mental institution at the hand of Hillary Clinton. We saw all that stuff, and it came forward, and people said, "Wow, this is not a nice woman. This is a terrible person." And I just hope that this only just educates people more on people like Bill Gates. I mean, we saw with David Rockefeller too. At the end of his life, every single person, when they thought of David Rockefeller, thought of an evil old miser. So, hopefully, the representation in the media and people talking about this, the word of mouth, helps out a bit. Send in your questions, guys. We only have a little while left here. I see a super chat from John Snyson, The Economic Truth, sent $6.99 Canadian, says, "Good to see you all. Good to see you, John. Thanks for tuning in." We got Rainy Steps, who sent Canadian $2.79, says, "Dan, hello from Orangeville." I don't know where Orangeville is, but
I went
Dan.
to school as a kid.
Oh, really? Wow. Yeah. The more you know. All right. Well, thank you very much for that, Rainy. And then we got Pragya Bardwaj sent 250 rupees. Thank you so much. He says, I can't tell he or she, I can't tell. Sorry, I'm not great with foreign names. My apologies ahead of time there. But he says, see your point, but why are resilient economies with strong domestic consumption buying into the fear-mongering of this supposed pandemic? India is in a lockdown for 21 days with just under 10,000 cases. And that's insane because India is the second most populous country in the world. There's a ridiculous amount of people in India. And for there to only be 10,000 cases, that, the numbers are being manipulated. In China, I think they're being undercounted. In the US, they're being overcounted. Everyone that gets in a car accident, everyone that has a heart attack, people who have cancer, they're like coronavirus, and then prop up the numbers, just like they did with AIDS in Africa back in the 80s. But what do you think about that, Tim?
All right, well, from AIDS over to me. So, okay, I mean, we're talking about Hillary Clinton. Let's not forget about, spirit cooking with Maria Abranovich and everything else she had going on. But yeah, I agree with everything that Benny and Dan said. But, also now people can use this time to learn new skills. I mean, I'm learning, OBS and doing other stuff and how to, if you want to be doing what we're doing. I mean, one day I taught myself how to video edit. I taught myself how to do different things and started making memes. And everyone out there can be just like us. Now, unfortunately, it's a lot harder because now of all the shadow banning and, censorship and digital book burning. But, still go out there and learn some skills. But now people, I went to go get some slice of pizza the other day, and I asked the guy, how things are going and with business. And then he's, gets into it and starts telling me, hey, I think this is all basically a big push to get people on vaccines and more Big Brother. And this is just, the guy cooking pizza, who in the middle of nowhere out here, and he can, see what's going on. But you're going to see more of a push towards homeschooling, maybe more push towards teleconferencing, maybe using different, video streaming apps to talk with people instead of having to go into the office. Maybe in the future, instead of going into, a government indoctrination camp, maybe they could have some sort of like Ron Paul type curriculum where you could have, the best in the world teaching you in that specific subject and not have. So I think the paradigms of everything we're used to, I think a lot of that can change. And then I guess the other good part is, I just hurry up. Can we just hurry up and have this police state just get here? So then that way we don't have to worry about this anymore. So, I just want all this journey to just almost hurry up. So then that way, because things have to get worse before they get better. And I think unfortunately that's where things are headed. But the quicker we get there, the quicker we can get out of there. So I am, somewhat, hopeful in the future.
Well, I'm back. Yeah, my my Zoom dialed out, and this is why we have multiple people as hosts for this, because that would have shut down the whole stream. So, but I'm here, and we figured out technology during this quarantine that works for us, so that we don't lose our whole stream. By the way, I want to give a big shout out to Karen Keener, who sent $20 in the super chat that says, "I am grateful each day for my life, for everything I have, not knowing what the future holds. I love and feel blessed for what I have. To he who hath shall be given, to he who hath not shall be taken, even what he hath." Well, I really appreciate that insightful super chat today, Karen. Thank you so much for that. Always great to see you. Zach Dowlin mentions Pragya, the police are beating citizens with canes for walking down the street in India. And that is true. There have been a lot of videos coming out of police beating people up in the streets. We're seeing that in Spain right now. People who have permission to go to the grocery store, like you need permission to go to the grocery store, guys, are getting beaten in the streets for doing just that. So obviously, blue lives. Yeah,
are these,
right.
Are these 6 foot canes? So so the police are properly social distancing themselves.
Yeah, that's a good question, but nothing applies to the government, does it? Bonifacius Valsgantis sent 50, I believe, South Korean currency in the super chat, or Swedish. I always forget, Swedish kroner. Anyway, greetings from Sweden. I am still free. Well, thank you so much for the super chat, and all those go a long way here at WAM and keep us up and running. So again, thank you so much for all that. Let's get into some quick questions. I know I don't want to be taking too much of your time, everyone. Let me know if you need to go anytime soon, because we're just going off the cuff here. Benny, are you good?
Yeah, I'm good for a few more minutes.
In a few more minutes? Okay. So let's see. We got some questions somewhere in here. I'm trying to find them, but nonetheless.
While you're looking for them, I have something. I want to piggyback on this idea of videos and stuff. I've been saying this for a long time. anybody out there, if you see a video that you think is important, that helped you in some way gather information, or, that you think would be good to share with someone, download it. Now is the time to make sure that we protect all the material that's been put on YouTube. Protect it, keep it, put it on a hard drive, re-upload it. We don't want this information to be gone. This is why we're able to combat the New World Order as well as we are, is because we have the information to do it. So protect it, hold on to it. Download Dan's videos, Josh's videos, Tim's videos, my videos, anybody's videos who you think is helpful. That's important. Make sure you have a copy of it on a hard drive, because it might be gone very soon.
Absolutely. And I definitely recommend everyone go to float.app to find me, because I'm definitely putting things there, as well as I keep everything backed up off the internet as well. But at flote.app, you could join me there. And by the way, if you haven't already, go subscribe to Benny Wills on YouTube. Go subscribe to Press for Truth on YouTube. It's all linked below, guys. And I mean, seriously, we all need to work together, not in the sense that we're all repeating the same things, in the sense that we should all be working together to spread our truth. Whether we all agree with everything each other says or not, it doesn't matter. It's about spreading the ability to have a voice in these very uncertain times. And I hope that everyone stays as safe as possible. Robin Wills says, did you see what Alexa said to the question when the coronavirus come to an end? Well, so there is a video that's making the rounds of Alexa when asked who created the coronavirus, or did the government create the coronavirus. Alexa starts talking about, yes, it was created in a lab to enslave humanity and blah, blah, blah. Has anyone seen that?
No.
It's a crazy video. If you have Alexa, I don't know if it still works after a couple days of that video being viral, but if it does, you guys should check that out and ask Alexa if you actually have Alexa in your house, which I don't know if any of us do, but yeah, definitely worth checking out. I'm not finding any questions here. So with that said, I really appreciate everyone tuning in today. Benny, you do great work. What is on the books for you coming up in the near future? What are you working on right now that people can check out and support?
Sure. Well, I have a poetry book that was planned to be released at the Red Pill Expo in June, but the expo obviously is on hold for now, and I suppose my book will be on hold as well. But I'm just trying to keep navigating my way through this matrix. I mean, I just got a house with my wife. We got a house the day before the law office closed their doors indefinitely and stopped closing houses for people. So we really got in as the gate was closing. That's a miracle. Wow. But, we got a big backyard. I just bought a bunch of seeds, and it's springtime now. So I'm going to be really focusing on my life and my life with my family, and, making sure we are one step ahead of the game at all times. And of course, I'm still doing content on my channel. I'll be releasing some poems on there and some other analysis and whatnot. And so, subscribe to my channel. It's a baby channel. It needs some love. So go check it out. And man, I'm just going to keep doing my thing and trying to fight off this quarantine best I can.
Yeah, and you always have really great insights and great work as an artist there, Benny. Your work with Joy Camp over the years has been seriously some of the greatest awakening material that you could hand to someone that's like, I don't want to read a book. I don't want to, but they like entertainment, and here's some entertainment, and here's some facts with entertainment, and here's, I really think it drives it home for a lot of people, and is an important part of this movement in teaching people the truth and the issues of, conspiracy theories, good and evil, the government, different rights being infringed. So I really appreciate what you do. So everyone should go and subscribe to Benny Wills on YouTube. We have it there linked below. And Dan, what is your next step in all of this? I know you like we're just like producing videos on a day-to-day basis, trying to figure out how to navigate this stuff. But what's your plans?
Well, it's kind of go time for us. Like it's the busy season, I guess you could say. Everybody's tuning in to learn as much information as they can about this stuff. So yeah, we've got a lot of work to do moving forward, but there's a lot of things that I had planned that are obviously not going to be able to come to fruition anymore. Obviously, right around now, I'd be looking into getting some leaked information on where and when Bilderberg might be. It looks like that's going to be canceled. I was supposed to be heading to the UK in July to appear on David Icke's son's podcast. They were going to fly me out there to do that, to create a show called One Man's Press for Truth. And I don't know if that's going to be happening anymore. So that's a real shame. So I guess at this stage in the game, I'm just going to continue to plug away, here, do my walk and talk vlogs, do my live broadcasts every now and then, interview people, and continue to just try to navigate these uncharted waters right now and kind of clear the muddied waters as best as I can. So I'm really just taking it day by day, Josh, as you. And if people want to learn from me, they should just type in Press for Truth on YouTube, and you'll find me there. Be sure to subscribe.
Absolutely. While we're still alive and well on YouTube, not well, but we're alive. And Tim, finally closing it off, what's your plans? Working your butt off every single day as a financial advisor and a YouTuber now?
Yeah, I mean, to Dan's point, I mean, you said type in Press for Truth. That might work today. It might not work tomorrow. So make sure you guys get that, because it is important. Luckily, we got people like Ernest Hancock with IPFS and other backup systems to be able to help mitigate against what is probably eventually coming. But yeah, I'm super busy on both ends of the candle over here. We started doing some videos with Luke Radowski actually the day everything started crashing, like 3 or 4 weeks. Actually, I think it was a month ago. Tomorrow, that Monday, everything started going down. So we've been I've been probably 4 videos a day the past month. Really, like Dan said, this is go time right now. So for me, being somebody that's really, seeing what was coming and then was able to profit last year and not lose hardly anything this year, it's been absolutely go time. So as soon as I get off this, I've got client phone calls I've got to make and other stuff. But yeah, I'll be putting out videos every day. You guys can check out my YouTube channel as well. It's also a baby channel, so pretty soon, hopefully, we'll get enough people over there to. But yeah, no, definitely appreciate everyone who's been checking us out and for all the work that everyone here is doing. I mean, I know with Dan, I've been following you since you've been going to Bilderberg, I probably was a little bit late to the game. Probably didn't discover that to 2010, but, really appreciate all your work. Just the other day, I asked somebody about Bilderberg, and they had no idea what it was. So I did refer them to some of your work. But yeah, appreciate everybody's, contributions here.
Absolutely. Well, I really appreciate everyone joining us today. Make sure to check those links below. All of them, just scroll down. There's lots of stuff that you can, ways to support, ways to get involved, many different things that you guys can check out. And I definitely recommend everyone subscribing to those channels below. Big shout out to Kevin Smith, who sent $3 in the super chat, says, be careful in a foreign land during great upheaval. And see, that's one of the most positive things. And thank you, by the way. That's one of the most positive things I've found. And closing it off, I want to add that here in Mexico, everyone's been so good to me, has helped in any way they could. I mean, it's seriously more evidence that people are good everywhere. It's just the news. It's just the government. It's just the banks. It's just the evil that we see among society. It brings us down. It drains us and makes us feel like the whole world is caving in on us. But most people are good, and work with those people. Talk to those people. Make alliances with those people. Do what you need to do to keep yourself safe, your family safe, and free. And as always, I really appreciate everyone joining us today. And until next time, this is Josh Sigurdsson with Dan Dix, with Benny Wills, with Tim Pachote, signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.